Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, welcome again. And we've got a very special episode today. I say special because not only have we got a brace of Secretary Generals, but we're also having two people on at the same time. So hopefully we'll be as successful as we can expect to be. But with these two gentlemen, I'm sure we will. So the gentleman I'm talking about is Glenn Shires, Secretary General of FEDAGSA, which is the Federation of Airline General Sales Agents, and Glenn will give us a little bit of an introduction into the workings and the mechanics of being responsible for that particular organisation. And somebody who's been on before, an old friend, Vladimir Zubkov, who's also the Secretary General of TIACA, which is the International Air Cargo Association. Gentlemen, lovely to have you. And with tongue in cheek, I haven't done two before.
You expect us to believe you?
Very nice to see you guys. Really, really appreciate it. So today's date, 13th of May, and things are starting to change, obviously a lot more fluid. But firstly, if you can just tell us where you're speaking from and what your main responsibilities are, so everybody knows who they're listening to.
Okay.
So Vladimir.
Okay.
Vladimir, let's start with you.
Glenn, you started.
I'm starting? Okay. Glenn Shires, Secretary General, Federation of Airline General Sales Agents, based in Geneva, currently speaking to you from London, locked down like everybody else. Yeah. And we are the federation that looks after the interests of the general sales agents for cargo. And we are now 31 years in existence.
Oh,
and we are a not-for-profit organisation. We provide a range of services to the members, available on our website, of course, not advertising. That's who we are. That's what we do.
Very good. Nice one. And Vladimir?
Well, TIACA is the International Air Cargo Association. It's a non-profit organization. We are overseeing the overall air cargo supply chain. And what Glenn has said, it's the beginning of our supply chain. We start with the shippers, with forwarders, then it goes to the ground handling, airports, airlines, manufacturers of planes, the Boeing and the Airbus. They're also members because they manufacture the cargo planes. So we are working to the benefit of our members. We have about 350 members now, and we provide services like training. We represent our members vis-a-vis international organizations and governments, and we try to coordinate as much as possible throughout the supply chain, especially at the time of crisis when new procedures appear, new problems appear. So this is what probably we will be talking about.
Very good, very good. And Glenn, can I ask you, how strong is your membership?
We have 181 member companies. They range in size from the very smallest, turning over approximately 10 million, all the way up to the larger ones, which turn over just under 3 billion. One of our members, ECS, is on the Bertrand. Our friend Bertrand is on the board of TIACA, for example. So it's a complete range. In terms of size of turnover, the IATA CAS system, when we had a report done at the beginning of 2019, so it was the 2018 year, our members were responsible for 17.8% of all the job files booked into the CASs globally.
Okay, that's no mean number, huh?
Yeah, they're responsible for one hell of a lot of trade.
Yeah.
But they're the agents, so they speak to the forwarders every day in order to get their daily bread, and they speak to the airlines on a daily basis to find what used to be in massive oversupply capacity.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings me now to something that's, which is why we wanted to do this particular show. So I listen in regularly with the World Health Organization, and they keep talking now about the 3 C's. being communication, cooperation, and collaboration. So it's great to see two large organisations like yourselves, having similar goals, similar objectives, and supporting each other. Now, there's another 3 C's that I think are important at the moment, which are clarification, coordination, and control. And what I'd like to ask each of you, and I'd like to start with you first, Glenn, is what have been some of the biggest problems that your organisation has been facing since the start of this and since it entrenched itself across the globe as to where we are now?
I think the single biggest problem our members faced initially in the first month was the rate of decline in capacity as the airlines basically headed for the ground.
Yeah.
And consequently, they knew what freight had been pre-booked into different areas, and yet there was an inability to then service that demand in the normal way. So there was no clarity. Communication was very poor, but what they started to do was cooperate with each other, to use one of the other C's, and groups of them got together and effectively became co-loaders in order to serve the customers. Yeah. Because a general sales agent is commonly known as a general sales and service agent. And they started to lean very much on the service side of it, because they represent a carrier, but their customer is the forwarder. It's a very strange situation. So they became service oriented. And that was the initial reaction to everything. And now, in searching for clarity as they go forward, they're looking at airline schedules that are starting to be published in a more coordinated way. And everybody's looking for clues as to what's really happening. And the intelligence is being shared. And the first trick is to speak to the ground handlers, because they're the first phone call an airline makes if he wants to get something into the sky.
Correct.
So our boys and girls always coordinate extensively in their normal operations with the ground handlers. And now their ear to the ground method of speaking with the ground handlers is providing an information feed on what aircraft types are actually going to be operating, what loads actually could get on the aircraft, now that certain airlines have started stuffing the overhead bins with cargo.
Yeah, the Praters, huh? The Praters. I'll come to you again on that, Glenn, because one of the things that I personally, and I'm a big supporter of, are the ground handling agents. And they're the unsung heroes of the entire supply chain and the washing machine of all of the business. So I'll come back to you on that a little bit later. But the same question over to you, Vladimir. What do you think have been the biggest challenges for your membership, since this entrenched itself in our daily lives?
What Glenn has said all is valid in our organization as well, but it's multiplied by the number of links which exist between those who start the operations and those who continue. Glenn has very rightly said that GSSAs, they are the engine and they're starting all the operations. And then when we go further, we count on mutual understanding between the professions and the trades. And this is where the system started breaking up. To a certain extent, because of the number of people who started leaving the system, either because of the restrictions or because they just got ill.
Yeah.
And the restrictions, this is what is perhaps one of the first problems which we had to battle with, because imagine air crew, they go to China. And if it's just ordinary people, they come back to their country, they have to be put in the quarantine.
Exactly.
For 14 days, you are without this crew. Yep. So we had to address this issue, and through ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, we managed to obtain clarity in this, that the air crew is supposed to be exempt from this requirement. But of course, it doesn't go without certain rules and procedures which are to be applicable for those who fly to the dangerous countries. So these new procedures had to be developed, and now they have turned in a very sophisticated set of steps which all those who fly to these countries have to follow. And not only people, but also the airplanes as well, which are to be disinfected.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an important thing that I also want to cover as well, is about the difference or the balance between fear and confidence of the consumer or anybody else. So what you were saying there about crews, so we're talking about things like special vehicles, taking them directly to a special hotel, being confined to their rooms, getting room service, all those particular issues and restrictions that people wouldn't probably know about.
Not only this, which certainly true, but also the organization of unloading and loading of the airplane, which is to be organized in such a way that we, when it's possible, would allow a quick turnaround of airplane. So this is where we have to be in sync with the ground services, so that within this narrow window during which the aircraft is to stay on the ground, they would be able to finish their procedures. And if they don't, then sometimes the aircraft has to fly back, because if it stays long on the ground, the flying time will exceed the norm which is allowed for this aircrew. So they simply cannot get stuck there, because then they will have to go to the hotel and follow all what you have said, please. And this is not sometimes on the books of the airline.
Exactly, which is why sometimes they're going out with double crews.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, now coming back to you, Glenn, that obviously puts additional pressures on the GHAs again.
It does.
And with all of their ground rules and, looking after their people. And this brings me to something that I think is important, that if anybody that's listening, everybody starts talking about social distancing, which is a crucial part of how we protect ourselves. But there are certain realities in certain businesses where social distancing just it can't be worked like on an aircraft. Okay, so eventually there has to be different mitigating actions that are taken. So whether or not people are responsible before they get on an aeroplane, whether they wear PPE, masks, gloves, bringing their own food, all those usual things. So for a GHA, that, to be honest with you, they're used to being given new directives on a regular basis, whether it's security or safety. So to a degree, they're used to it, but they don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Well, I absolutely agree they don't. And I think the world needs to recognise, whilst I speak for the GSAs, our daily contacts are to ensure the service levels necessary for the clients with the GHAs. And were it not for the skill, the overtime work in a lot of countries and a lot of places, the world's supply chains for even the essential equipment wouldn't have happened. Now, in order to load an aircraft, and you will know it, you do tend to get close to your fellow man, making sure everything's been put in the right place. And some jobs are not one-person jobs either.
Yeah, lifting, sharing the lifts.
Yep, and getting in and out of the cabs is not something you've got the opportunity to get in and out of with different people and clean it in between. These things are on short turnarounds, otherwise crewing hours go away.
Yeah.
So the amount of work has been misunderstood by the general public, and they could not understand it because they're not part of the industry.
Yeah.
But within the industry, the critical link is the ground handlers, and that's why, as I said earlier, our boys and girls are listening to what's happening with the ground handlers to get clues on what services will be available, so that they can let the freight community know what you can do. And then they get inventive. I mean, freight's been hubbing and spoking like a passenger airline in order to get things to where they need to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's incredible. And I think, anybody, everybody now is quite rightly respecting and talking about the frontline heroes in the care side of our lives, hospitals, care homes, etc. And quite rightly they should do. But the amazing thing is, for this world to keep going round and for us to appreciate what we always took for granted, there are so many other frontline people as well, who have done an incredibly good job. And I just think, one of these hidden heroes, again, I keep coming back to it, are the DHAs. Now, from training, from licensing, and from also oversight, which is one of the things that your representatives do a lot of to represent their clients, I think that's also going to form a different type of cooperation and relationship. Do you agree?
Well, I think we've found on our side that the situation for cooperation and aligning of standards has been brought into focus by this. It's shone a light in some dark corners, and it's caused people to make decisions on the spot in order to get the job done. And tongue-in-cheek, or perhaps not so tongue-in-cheek, the hierarchy has had to listen to the people who daily get the job done in order to understand a lot more than maybe they did sitting further up in ivory towers. Exactly.
Feet on ground, huh? That's the old fog.
It works.
The fog of senior management. They can see it from a helicopter view, but very seldom from on the ground, which I think is something that needs to be done more of again. Vladimir, just to cover again the point you made about data corridors and technology, can you just elaborate a little bit on what you're doing?
Yeah, the technology is becoming really very important, especially at the time when we are expecting people to observe the social distancing.
Yeah.
Like Glenn was saying, that there are jobs where you cannot avoid. You have to just put your shoulders together.
Yeah.
And there are jobs where you can still achieve this distancing between the people. And one of them is in the transmitting of information.
Yes.
That's why we are favoring data and logistics corridors, which allow for transfer of information electronically. In addition to this, we are reviving the concept of paperless environment, because if we use more electronic data to transfer information which contains an air cargo waybill, then it will be less personal handover between people who carry this paper all over the world.
My goodness me, that would be fantastic, huh?
Yeah, so it's not only the economies, but also now the very pragmatic issue of touching something which can carry the germs.
Yep.
I also would like to talk about the organizational measures. It's like the organization of work, say, at a particular airport. And we have experience amongst our members of airport cargo communities, when people of different trades and responsibilities, like handling and sales and customs and security and health officials, they form like a committee which is working on the most rational and efficient utilization of the facilities and the workforce.
No, I think it's a terrible thing that this virus and this crisis is leading to so much innovation, change, automation, and things that should have been done. But nonetheless, I think the new normal is going to be a lot more effective when we come out of this. So thanks for that, Vladimir. Now, Glenn, a similar sort of question to you, and Vladimir touched there on, having more correct data. So, things that were always a bone of contention, ready for carriage, the correct shipper and consignee details being made available for the ground handling agents when they needed them. All of those issues Do you genuinely think that these sort of areas will be much better understood now, and that the whole process will be more efficient and more automated?
I do, and I do for two reasons. The first reason is the technology has been available, but the people were just not predisposed to either picking it up and learning new tricks. They could do it the old way. There was nothing to stop them doing it the old way. And some people were not prepared to invest in the technology necessary to make this happen. And it's not that expensive in the greater scheme of things. But now the driving factors are economic and health and safety. So I think we're going to see a very rapid uptick in the use of the electronic airway bill, for a simple example. But the data interchange, we should have been using the internet instead of all the old-fashioned data interchange systems. And I'm thinking of and they won't thank me for this, the CETA cargo in messages and everything else. Everybody calls them CETA messages, but they're actually IATA standard messages. So I believe that the data's been flying around, and now it's going to be used properly. The Federation actually stepped up, and we have two of our own airway bills in action, because we had to be flexible, and you had to handle the IT side of being flexible at the same time. Nobody knew who was really going to be flying to a particular destination, or whether you could get hold of enough cargo to fill a certain space. So the members have been using our own airway bills to consolidate. So the forwarders have been booking space, for example, to Asia, or from Asia into Africa, or via hubs, and they've been using our airway bills to do that. And then our members have secured space on an Emirates or a Cathay or an American Airlines, and achieved the result. The forwarders have been able to track our airway bills and handle things, and we've been able to give the members a tool that allows them to provide a service. Couldn't have done it without the full-on use of technology.
With that full-on use of technology, so some of the things that I find amazing is some of the nuances and some of the government restrictions and the WCO lack of consolidation or collaboration or even consistency around the world, where you've got to have certain proof of origin, you've got to have blue ink on certain documentation. I mean, those things have got to be resolved very, very quickly, which is a different issue. But for your membership, the house airway bill transparency and things like that, where that's always caused problems in the past. There are certain sensitivities that the digitization will obviously open up. So people are going to have to change. And I just want to ask both of you, if I had the chance to do it, I would issue a code of conduct, and I would say, from such and such a date, this is what you've got to do. Make it very clear, very simple. This is what you've got to do. And if it's not being done, your shipments won't be accepted. What do you think of that?
Well, I think certain countries have already done it. I mean, the advanced manifest systems going to the United States and other countries contain house airway bill data. Okay? The contentious nature of having house airway bill data is monetary, it's competitive. It's if that information is leaked to my competitor, they will go to my shipper, says the freight forwarder, and they'll have all the data and they'll compete with me on this. So it's a bit like having your bank account. It's secured by the technology that the bank says is secure, but there is no such thing as perfectly secure technology. I think the rules will have to change, and the rules will be twofold. The people who have the data, the forwarders, etc., will be required to put it in there. But the systems that handle it will have to be subject to some serious regulation to make sure that this doesn't become
exactly
a problem, shall we call it?
No, that's exactly where I was coming from. And there'll have to be certain security measures that are built into the system, and it'll be signed up and everything. So I agree. But you agree that to do it, we've got to overcome all of these particular sensitivities from wherever we are in that particular chain.
Yeah, but then you come to the problem, which is too much for this discussion. You couldn't put it into the hands of a FEDAGSA or a TIACA or an IATA, which is the airlines club.
Yeah.
You have to have an organisation and a rule of law, probably the arbitration court in Paris, which is where everybody ends up when they're feeling silly.
Yeah.
You'd have to have something like that for it to be acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. But if ever there was a time, now's the leverage.
Yeah.
And Vladimir, from your perspective, you know, if it was possible, and like I said, it's just my personal opinion. I think when things are tough, you have to have tough measures, and you have to do things that speed the process up wherever possible to allow people to see positivity. So, if I was to issue a code of conduct, do you think that's the right thing to do or not?
You know, we are in a democratic society, and it's a bit difficult to apply the dictatorial measures. But I think that this is the unique time when it can be attempted. I have worked at the major airports, airlines, and it's not only the cargo which I know about. And I recall the time when the ticket was issued on the paper by hand, later replaced by a computer issuance. But then the time came when everybody decided that there should be no more paper tickets. Everybody, I mean, it came from a dictatorial organization. And this is how we changed into the modern society, when we don't need to carry this paper ticket. Something similar is to occur in the cargo. And when I joined the air cargo industry more than a decade ago, it was one of the first issues which we discussed together with IATA, how to introduce the electronic airway bill. And we keep on talking about the penetration, about the improvement in certain locations. Yes, progress is there, but it's not as fast as we all want it to be. So something probably is to be done. And when it comes to the, you mentioned World Customs Organization or customs authorities, who also have a very important role in this, because they are the recipients of these airway bills. So maybe not at the global level, because we know that in every state, customs authorities are completely independent, and they don't report to World Customs Organization the same way as like technical people. Yeah. Regional basis. This is where our effort is to be also directed. And there are organizations which can be really useful. For instance, not that long ago, we had a session with the UN ISCAP, Economic Commission for Southeast Asia. And they are interested in promoting trade. And cargo is feeding the trade. So this is where we have a link of interests. And they are very closely associated with the customs officials there. So we need to look for these alliances and perhaps step away from the traditional way and be innovative, as you suggested just a few minutes ago.
100%, 100%. And what I also think is, I mean, everybody's using the new normal term now, and trying to work out what the new normal is going to be or what it's going to look like. But some of the things that have to be done post-COVID, as opposed to the way things were pre-COVID, is an awful lot of legacy waste and effort that was going into either things that may not happen or things that should happen, and people were being blockers instead of enablers. So I think the leverage and the pressure now, as a result of what's happening and also getting the economy back up, there's a great opportunity now to put some of those changes through as quickly as possible. But I want to ask you both, and so Glenn, I'll start with you. Everybody talks about worst case scenario, and were companies, were organizations as well prepared as they should have been? And the answer is very simply no. And the reason being, everybody was chasing the dollar, chasing the buck, and things like quality, safety, risk assessments, hazard identification, business continuity were things that people tended to tick in boxes, and the C-suite level management weren't so interested in it because they couldn't see any bottom line. They just seen it as a cost or effort or time taken away from commercial activities. Now, do you think your memberships, after this dies down a little bit, do you think they're going to spend a lot more time now on making sure that business continuity and risk assessment is a lot more, shall we say, professional and a lot more formal in the day-to-day management of the business?
Well,
Then?
I think the intelligent ones in our industries will do precisely that. I think the first thing they've learned is that these wafer-thin cash buffers that they've been working on,
Yeah.
and being nothing more than the momentum of last month's activity, as you can see, everybody got through March. April was a little bit sticky, and the settlements in CAS and everything else towards the end of April and the beginning of May have revealed exactly the extent of the lack of preparedness.
Yeah.
It wasn't an accident that EasyJet ran quickly for its loan and started to shore up its balance sheet. BA said we don't want any government help at all, principally because they knew everybody else needed it before them, and they were hoping. So I think there will constantly be a chasing of the dollar. However, they have started to realise you have to be alive to chase the dollar.
Yep. Yep.
And I think the sheer self-preservation of these businesses by their owners, directors or shareholders will cause a corporate policy in the big ones and a simple outbreak of sanity in the small ones to build contingencies and recognise what is key and what isn't. And they've had to focus, they've had to learn, what do I need to grow back? And the market will dictate. We used to have an excessive supply in terms of air freight capacity because the passenger side was going gangbusters.
Yeah.
And that was literally a buyer's market, and the freight rates reflected it. Now we will have a seesaw on different areas of the world where supply will exceed demand, and then demand will exceed supply. And over a period of 3 to 6 months, and not longer, it will stabilise into what is then known as the new normal. But that's just a rebalancing. Normal will be dictated by the market using supply and demand, and it will just grow back as demand comes from the confidence in the populations.
Exactly. The consumer confidence and their own risk assessment, because even now with the people talking about how desperate an exit plan from the lockdown is needed, you've got an awful lot of people. I think it was well over 50, even nearing 60%, who were suggesting that, especially for us, Glenn, here in the UK, that it would be better to wait for the lockdown to be released because people wanted to feel safer. So I think the public and the consumer are going to start creating their own risk assessment when it comes to definitely leisure travel, business travel, and how they travel in general. So I think that's going to be a thing of the future. Now,
I think, to be honest with you, a second clamping down will be worse than the first if we have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the public is smarter than most of the governing authorities in recognising that if we've done this far, and there's a lot of pain on the graph already, we don't need to see it exacerbated. We will follow the path, and we will look at what is happening in other countries and other places. And the public is judging. They're not great believers in government presented statistics. They are voting like everybody else does, with their wallet, their pocketbook. And they will defer expenditure, and they will sit back, and discretionary spend will be held, and that will dampen certain demands. Think replacing your iPhones and all this kind of stuff. That won't be a real issue for a while. And this tends to be the air cargo type of product. So
yeah.
we'll see a tempering of demand, but then we've seen a big tempering of capacity. And it will rebalance. It is known as the new normal, but it is the same basic supply and demand equation that has governed us all along.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, well, as I said to you guys at the beginning, we're sitting here on the 13th of May, a Wednesday, and, you know, lots of decisions are being made. And I think, you know, without casting any doom, I think the majority of people are anticipating a second wave of this virus at some point, and now countries are already being divided into league tables. So you've got your New Zealand, and you've got your Korea, and the countries that are seen to have done things in a certain way, and others that are not. So I agree with you in as much as people forgive everybody who goes into a crisis that's never been experienced before, because you're going to make mistakes. But they're going to be a lot less forgiving now.
Correct.
To everybody who's involved, whether it's heading up an organisation like yourselves, whether it's a government, whether it's the CEO of a particular business. They won't be forgiven if they make very silly mistakes now as they come out of this. So this really is a chance now, you know, to make a lot of positive impact on an industry and a business that was running away, free rolling a little bit. So it does need certain controls to make it more effective, I think. So, Vladimir, as far as your organisation is concerned, do they feel, or do you think that they're going to focus more on having more effective QHSS&E? Because I think one of the regulatory changes that's going to happen to all of us is there's going to be a greater focus on hygiene and health. So there's going to be an awful lot of standardization and drives being built in there, because that's going to stick with us for a long time.
You know, what the membership thinks about this is very important. And we asked our members, what are your main concerns? One of the main concerns is very much in line with what Glenn was saying just a few minutes ago, and this is the financial issues which, if prolonged, they can really break the bank of some of the companies. And in this situation, they cannot act as individuals just without any surroundings which they work in. And this is where, again, I would like to recall that the air cargo supply chain, it's a mix of disciplines. And some are visible, some are not. Airlines and airports, they are in the forefront. Everybody knows about them.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the ground handling, for instance. They are overshadowed by the airlines and airports and other visibles, right? And what this means in terms of the question which you have asked, they are not known to the governments, and the governments don't plan for help to them. That's why one of the objectives of TIACA is to make it known to the governmental circles that it's not only the airlines which are participating in the air cargo supply chain.
Exactly.
If you, the government, if you really need the air cargo, and this is the strategic imperative, this is something which sustains the life of the states. So if you want this air cargo to move, then you have to think about all the players, big and small. And this is one of the objectives of my association, to make it really known that there are many, many players in the supply chain. All needs to be taken care of. You asked about the new procedures. Yes, we talk a lot about the purity of the cargo, the purity of the air cargo operations. And this is something which is completely new. And this is what needs to be really standardized, because it's important for the crews, it's important for the airplanes, it's important for the ground handling to know how the cargo and airplane are to be disinfected. I'm happy that ICAO has taken lead in this. They recently asked for our input, and I collected information from some friendly airlines and submitted it to ICAO. So we will know how to act for disinfection of individuals and technology on the ground. So this kind of experience is to be collected and organized and promoted. This is also something which we don't always do very well. We need to pass information on to those people who are to benefit from the best practices, from the knowledge which is developed either in other places or by the international organizations.
Exactly, Vladimir, which comes back again to the 3 C's. The amount of communication between parties now has to improve, otherwise the cooperation will be stunted and then collaboration will be resisted. So I agree, everybody's got to be given as much information as possible, but they got to keep the information simple so that people can follow it. Because if things are too open and too grey, misinterpretation or understanding or pressures, and there will be an awful lot of pressures now as people need to start generating revenue, so there'll be a lot more pressure now, unfortunately, I think, on the GHAs. I admire what you're saying about getting the governments to appreciate how important they are in the cargo supply chain, which is critical. But again, I keep referring to them as washing machines. They have to tidy up so much. They have to clean up so much. And when you think, you know, they're accepting cargo, obviously before, they're accepting cargo without the correct documentation, you know, they're putting it in as freight on hand. They're doing so much to be so flexible because of the competition that they're facing. But if you ask anybody who has to put regular washing in, they don't throw all the colours in together and they don't throw all the muck in because it starts to break the washing machine. So I think the washing machine is going to have to come out with its own guidelines very shortly, and please God, everybody else will start to respect it a lot more.
In order to make that happen, you have to make it the law.
Or the stepping stones, which, like I say, normally you have a code of practice, then a code of conduct, then you have recommendations, etc. So it's just getting everybody on the same level of appreciation that, you know, we must not now try and fall back on all of the other resistance. We need more enablers than blockers. And we need people to just look at the process, look at the supply chain and pick out where the biggest risk areas are and where the biggest beneficial supportive areas are that can make everything go quicker. And Neil, you said yourself, Glenn, sorry, you said yourself about the time on the ground for aircraft, and then you're talking about how quickly things can be loaded, optimizing capacity. We've got all these areas which all falls back down again onto the ground handling agent, and they need cargo delivered in earlier. They need, you know, they don't want to go back now to the old days where everything is last minute rush. Things need to change.
There may well be a driver that will help the cargo industry, and it's the passenger industry, in that lead times for check-in are going to get longer. Procedures for dealing with people's baggage, which by definition has been handled recently by various people, may have to go through an additional cleaning process before the ground handlers are exposed to it and transmitted everywhere. So I can see that the procedures that are being driven on the passenger side may add time available to the ground handlers on the cargo side for us to be able to enhance our procedures without the airlines turning around and saying, and leaning on the ground handlers for cargo to do things more quickly, because we will have that window. For example, for quite a long time, the low-cost operators wouldn't take cargo because they were shooting for their 20-minute turnarounds.
Yeah.
Now, because cargo couldn't safely be done within a 20-minute, it didn't happen. Now I suspect the 20-minute turnaround, beloved by our friends at Ryanair, EasyJet and Southwest and everywhere else, I think they may have problems getting back to those benchmarks simply because the procedures for safety won't allow it.
Yeah, no, that's valid, and everybody's concerned now with the pressures and also with people on furlough and laid off, etc. That to keep the level of expertise and training, which was on a decline anyhow, but which is so important in the industry, is going to potentially suffer. So I've got a question for you. Glenn. So please, you also represent your membership with regard to tender advice and suggestions, and how to handle a tender. And do you think it's worthwhile from both of your memberships to try and influence some of the criteria that should be a prerequisite of tenders in the future?
I do, and the methodology for that is our friends at IATA. So when you've got my mate Glenn Hughes on,
yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, I heard. The standard IATA GSSA contract, so template.
Yeah.
Lots of airlines like to deviate from it, okay, and make themselves a bit special, thereby breaking the very standardization that we're seeking in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Okay. The pricing and everything else has been put on a separate schedule known as Schedule D. Okay. Yeah. So take the commercial side off into its normal Schedule D and literally pass a resolution amongst the airlines stating what those standards should be.
Yeah.
And the usual deal is, if you don't want to accept IATA's rules and resolutions, then you're not a member of IATA.
Yeah.
That might be the stepping stone you were looking for.
Yeah, and
ask him when he's going to propose it.
Yeah, I will. I'll ask him tomorrow on your behalf.
Cheers.
And Vladimir, what do you think?
Well, I don't want to pretend that our association is dealing with everything, and I know all in the aviation. So we are not in tendering. But instead, let me address another issue which is similar to tendering. It's which airlines and where they can fly. So it's almost like tenders who to operate. And this is where I think that improvements are in order. What we have faced at the early stage of the COVID crisis is the inability of some airlines to deliver cargo to the destinations which are not in the bilateral agreement.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the procedure for approving flight to a certain destination would be very long and cumbersome. So to a certain extent, it's the result of the bad tendering procedure. So it has to be simplified. It has to be made user-friendly, which would allow for quick deviation from the route if necessary. It would allow for delivering efficiently cargo to the destinations which are not prescribed in the first tender, which was concluded between the government and the airlines. So this is where I think that improvements are absolutely essential. And this is what needs to be done not just by one government, but it's normally either bilateral or multilateral arrangement. So it has to be done at the regional or global scale.
Okay, this is what we This is what we spotted at the very beginning when our members were struggling to be able to provide a service to a destination. They needed to be able to deviate routes as long as they got it to the destination. Yeah. And for that, you needed the technology.
Yeah.
And you needed a level of simplification in using that technology. And that's where our own airway bill came in. It was just a simplification tool.
Yeah.
And we were able to make it happen. So we've all been learning new tricks through this. And Vladimir's 100% right in this multilateral way of working provides the flexibility the industry obviously requires when things happen. Now, if we get regional outbreaks of a virus, for example, we need to be able to reroute things in there and around there very quickly.
Yes, yes.
We,
No, exactly.
we need the flexibility, and that means the rules have got to be flexible.
Yeah, yeah. Or controlled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. Gentlemen, we're coming near to the end of the time, and I think we finished on a good point there. So again, just to reiterate, the communication, cooperation, and collaboration, we've covered that. But what's more important is the clarification, so people can really appreciate and understand, and then the coordination, which leads to a degree of control. And I don't mean control in a dictatorial fashion, but just so that people understand that there are certain rules, guidelines, as we're all aware, but they can be improved over time.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
friends, thank you so much. I think what you do, representing your members and also coming together and giving certain experience voice to organisations, officialdom, and everywhere else, is to be admired. Well done. Really appreciate it. And like I said at the beginning, it's the first time I've had 2 Secretary Generals at the same time. So it wasn't such a painful experience, and it's one that I'd be happy to do again. But thank you so much for coming on, and really appreciated it. And the more we talk positively about things that will happen in the new normal, I think, the better the world's going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Vladimir, Chris, see you in Miami in November.
Wouldn't that be lovely, huh?
Yeah, we're all geared for this.
Wouldn't that be lovely? I used to live there, and it was a great memory, so I'd be happy to go back there anytime. Please God, huh?
Okay.
See you there.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much. Really
Take care,
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.